On May 17, 2026, something happened in Africa that almost never happens. A sitting government lost an election, cleanly, without violence, without legal challenges, without soldiers. The outgoing Prime Minister of Cape Verde, Ulisses Correa e Silva, conceded defeat the same night the votes were counted. He resigned as party leader. His opponent, Francisco Carvalho, was named Prime Minister designate. And the next morning, Cape Verde was still Cape Verde. No coup, no crisis, no chaos. In a continent where the Sahel has experienced 8 coups in 3 years, where sitting presidents amend constitutions to stay in power, where election results trigger street violence and international emergency meetings, a tiny island nation in the Atlantic simply changed its government. Like it has done 7 times since 1991, the world barely noticed. It never does, but it should. Because Cape Verde might be sitting on the most important secret in African governance, and nobody is asking what it is. To understand how extraordinary this is, you have to zoom out. Cape Verde is 10 volcanic islands in the Atlantic Ocean, 500 kilometers off the coast of Senegal. Population, 611,000. No oil, no gold, no diamonds, no natural gas. Only 10% of its land is arable. It imports most of its food. It imports all of its fuel. By every conventional measure of what makes a nation likely to succeed, Cape Verde should have failed. Resource-rich Nigeria, with oil revenues that dwarf Cape Verde's entire GDP, cannot hold a peaceful power transfer. Congo, sitting on trillions in mineral wealth, has never had one. Angola turned oil into one family's dynasty. Cape Verde has nothing, and it has everything. Freedom House gave it a score of 92 out of 100 in its 2026 Freedom in the World report, the highest of any African nation. It ranks 3rd out of 54 African countries on the Mo Ibrahim Governance Index. In June 2026, it is the only country in West Africa, a region consumed by coups, jihadist insurgencies, and constitutional crises, that just ran a free and fair election and transferred power peacefully. How? The answer begins not with what Cape Verde has, but with what it chose not to become. When independence came in 1975, the men who led the liberation movement made a decision that most post-colonial leaders did not. They chose not to treat the state as a prize. The PAIGC, the party that fought for independence from Portugal, was a liberation movement with Marxist roots. In theory, it had every ideological excuse to become a one-party state forever, like Angola, like Mozambique, like Guinea-Bissau, the other country it was originally unified with. Instead, in 1991, Cape Verde's ruling party allowed multi-party elections. And then, shocking detail, it lost. The losing party accepted the result, power transferred. The world moved on. But something had been established in those islands that would prove almost impossible to replicate elsewhere. The precedent that elections produce governments, not crises. Since 1991, Cape Verde has alternated power between its 2 main parties, the PAICV and the MPD, in a model of competitive, accountable governance that has never been interrupted. That sounds simple. It is not. In most African states, the party in power controls the security services, the courts, the electoral commission, and the state media. Losing an election means losing everything, including potentially your freedom and your assets. The rational choice for a leader who has built a system around himself is never to lose. Cape Verde broke that logic by building something different from the beginning. Institutions that existed to serve the state, not the party in power. Courts that operated independently, an electoral commission that functioned with credibility, a constitutional framework that divided power between a president and a prime minister from potentially different parties, a design called cohabitation. President José María Neves is from the PAICV. Until last month, his prime minister was Ulisses Correa e Silva from the rival MPD. 2 opponents sharing power, running a country successfully. But there is a second part of this story that nobody tells about Cape Verde, the diaspora. Roughly 700,000 Cape Verdeans live outside the country, more than its entire domestic population. They are in Portugal, the Netherlands, France, the United States, particularly in New England, where Cape Verdean communities have been present for 2 centuries, rooted in the whaling industry. Remittances from the diaspora totaled 267 million euros in 2023, representing a stable and substantial source of foreign exchange that continues to support household consumption. But remittances are just money. The more important contribution is culture. Cape Verdeans living in functioning European democracies for generations brought those expectations home. They voted in Cape Verdean elections from abroad. They are represented by 6 National Assembly members, specifically elected by diaspora constituencies. They built businesses back home. They funded education. They demanded accountability because they had seen what accountability looked like somewhere else. The diaspora did not just send money to Cape Verde. They sent expectations. Now add the geography lesson that nobody frames as a political story. Islands are different. You cannot have an insurgency that melts away into a rural hinterland when there is no hinterland. You cannot run an illegal mining operation in an ungoverned forest when there are no ungoverned forests. The physical geography of an archipelago creates natural surveillance. Everyone knows roughly who lives where. Movement between islands requires documented transport. Criminal networks that thrive on territory and anonymity find both much harder to sustain. This is not a guarantee of stability. It is a structural advantage that Cape Verde compounded with deliberate institution building rather than squandering with corruption. Compare that to mainland West Africa. Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, vast, landlocked Saharan, where governance thins out hundreds of kilometers from any capital, where armed groups establish parallel states in terrain no government can physically monitor. Geography is not destiny, but it is a starting condition. The economic story in June 2026 is equally striking. In 2025, the World Bank upgraded Cape Verde to upper middle income status, a significant milestone for an island nation with no natural resources. Real GDP grew by 7.3% in 2024, driven by tourism and services. Growth is projected at 4.7% in 2026, with inflation contained below 3% and foreign reserves standing at nearly 1 billion euros. None of this came from oil. None of it came from gold. It came from tourism built on the back of political stability, from foreign direct investment that flows to countries investors trust, from an educated workforce produced by consistent public investment in schools over decades, from a government that ran a fiscal surplus in 2025, almost unheard of in sub-Saharan Africa. The absence of natural resources was not Cape Verde's curse. It may have been its liberation. Countries with oil build states around extracting that oil. Countries without it are forced to build states around their people. Cape Verde built its state around its people. Does it have problems? Of course it does. The May 2026 election recorded a record low turnout. Only half of 400,000 registered voters cast ballots. Young Cape Verdeans, analysts note, are increasingly dissatisfied with the pace of change, not rejecting democracy, but demanding it deliver more. The economy is vulnerable. Tourism dependency means a pandemic, a geopolitical shock, or a European recession can erase years of growth overnight. COVID nearly did exactly that. Drug trafficking is a genuine threat. Cape Verde sits on Atlantic trade routes between South America and Europe. Its ports are targeted by transnational criminal networks. The government has invested in maritime security, hosting the Multinational Maritime Coordination Center for Zone G. But the pressure is constant, and a presidential election is coming in November 2026. The institutional systems will be tested again. But here is what makes Cape Verde genuinely remarkable in June 2026. Across West Africa, citizens are watching their governments fail. and turning to military juntas for answers. The appeal of the coup leaders in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger is not difficult to understand. When civilian politicians steal from you for 30 years, a soldier promising to clean it up has obvious appeal. Cape Verde shows a different possibility. Not perfection, not a miracle, not a country without problems, but a country where, when citizens are unhappy with their government, they vote it out. Where the voted-out government hands over power. Where the new government inherits functional institutions rather than hollowed-out shells. 4 weeks ago, Ulysses Correa e Silva stood in front of cameras and said, "The results did not reach the level of our objectives." He resigned. He went home. No soldiers. No lawyers filing emergency injunctions. No international emergency meetings. The system worked. The way it has worked, without interruption, since 1991. Back to where we began, May 17th, 2026. A small island nation with no oil and no gold changed its government in the night, went to sleep, and woke up still a democracy. The secret Cape Verde is sitting on is not a resource. It is not a location. It is not luck. It is the accumulated weight of a decision made 50 years ago to build institutions that outlast the ambitions of any individual, and the discipline to keep making that decision, election after election, generation after generation. In a continent where that discipline is rare, Cape Verde is not just a success story, it is a proof of concept. And in June 2026, with 8 coups in 3 years and 4 sitting presidents extending their own terms, it is the proof the continent needs most.